listening to the Lutheran Ladies Lounge podcast. I'm Sarah.
I'm Erin.
I'm Bree.
And I'm Rachel.
And now it is time for Bree's Big Question, where Bree presents us with a big question, and then we talk about it. We'll see where this goes. Bree, take it away. What is your big question today?
So in the month of October, this is something that I have sort of struggled with in my lifetime, particularly as a Lutheran. But during the month of October, it seems to me that there is a growing affinity, perhaps, for Halloween. Mm-hmm. And so I have my own thoughts about it, but not entirely sure what the LCMS in particular feels about trick-or-treating. I went on the Facebook group, and if you are on there, thanks for chipping in. If you did.
Lutheran Ladies Lounge, that's the name of the Facebook group.
That's right. That's
it is highly active, too.
It is highly active.
Radioactive.
Oh, hi-oh. Mic drop.
So I put it to the ladies on the Facebook group about whether or not they trick or treat, or if they are not of the age where they feel it is appropriate, because I feel like that age tends to vary. Some people think you should stop at 11, and some people think you should stop at 35. So
or 90. I don't know.
I got 2 more under my belt, or 3. I don't know how that works. I don't math. But anyway, so it was a pretty high energy, pretty serious discussion that was had. I think people had a lot of thoughts about it, both for and against Halloween. Mm-hmm. And when I talk about Halloween, I'm specifically referring to the act of trick-or-treating. Mm-hmm. It could be going door to door, asking for candy. It could be like a trunk or treat, which I feel is growing in popularity. So I did a little bit of digging in addition to asking about people celebrating Halloween, because I know that the celebration in and of itself is sort of shrouded in mystery as to its origins, and basically where do we as Lutherans fit into Halloween, specifically trick-or-treating.
Well, and let's just, acknowledge right out that the way some people celebrate Halloween is infused with the occult, is infused with a lot of paganism and some stuff that we really don't want to be associated with. And so, it is a controversy. Some years it's higher than others. Mm-hmm. It sort of comes and goes in Christian and Lutheran circles. But do we as Christians participate in trick-or-treating on Halloween?
Right. Mm-hmm. So I did some digging, and I feel like there is almost every. This is an overgeneralization, but it seems to me that every significantly large cultural group at one point or another celebrates dead people in October, or at the end of summer. Okay. I don't know why. I don't know if it's because summer is ending and fall is beginning. I don't know. So basically, Halloween is should I let it pass?
The joys of dogs barking.
For those of you listening at home, I'm recording in my home studio, and this is the time of day when the little girls next door get home and come to see if my daughters can play.
Yay! Whoops.
Real life hashtag.
It keeps it reals. It's good. It's fine.
Bree, what you're saying though about cultures all having this time, when my episode about hymn singing hint drops, that was the same thing I was finding too when I was researching my topic, which I won't give away at this moment. But that I was finding the same thing, that there in a lot of cultures, have this celebration of the dead in some form, whether it's a good like religious thing or some weird morbid cultural thing.
Right. So with Halloween in particular, you have sort of this ancient Celtic tradition of sow-win, which is not does not sound the way that it's spelled, but I learned today that it's sow-win.
I did not know that.
And it is sort of this celebration of nature and calling upon ancestors to protect the harvest and keep them safe during the winter, and bonfires, and definitely
Is this a holiday that is spelled Samhain?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yup. Sure is.
that's how I say it.
Samhain.
Sow-win.
Sowin.
That's how I say it in my head.
Me too.
That's
I had
one
to,
way to keep out
I had
the
to train
riffraff.
my brain before I came up here to be like, it's sowin. Don't pronounce it wrong. So that was a sort of an ancient celebration, and then you have sort of the Roman Empire taking over that area in 40 AD-ish, and so they sort of implemented their own like Roman stuff that they also happen to be doing at that time of the year. In Mexico and Latin cultures, you have Dia de los Muertos, which is a whole other sort of celebration of the dead, some sort of like ancestral worship, remembrance.
Yeah.
I don't know a whole lot about it, but point being, Halloween as it is in the United States was really not acknowledged until the 19th century, when probably not coincidentally, we saw a huge influx of Scottish and Irish immigrants to the country. But even then, like over the centuries, it's sort of become something else entirely. It's sort of secularized, not insofar as it's no longer sacred. It's to us, it's not the whole religious, spiritual aspect of the celebration. That's not really what it is anymore, and that's not really how we celebrate it. I would have to believe that, churches and church families and etc. wouldn't be celebrating Halloween or they wouldn't be going trick-or-treating if it had its, there were more nefarious, darker forces at play. So
Yeah, it's become more of a civic holiday, like the 4th of July or Memorial Day. And in that way, it's largely had, I think, its teeth and fangs removed from it in a spiritual sense, which is why, although I've been sort of back and forth throughout my life on whether and how much to celebrate Halloween, I think of it now as let your kids play dress up and go meet your neighbor's night, which is great because we have precious few holidays that give us an excuse to go around and say howdy to all our neighbors.
That's
Can
true.
you think of another one that does that?
Nope.
no,
Nope.
not really. Absolutely.
So in that way, it occupies this really, I think, important cultural space that, yeah, I remember one year trick-or-treating, that was the first time I had met one of my elderly neighbors. And she was so thrilled to see the cute little kids come up, give them candy. And of course, we weren't dressed in anything creepy. I know my kids always try to push the envelope, and I tell them every year, would your 4th grade Lutheran school teacher, Mrs. Mackey, approve of this costume? It is the Mrs. Mackey test for whether...
The litmus test,
I
but
really
it's the
hope you're
Mackey test.
I really hope you're listening, Ruth, because I hope that you will understand that this is the tribute that it's meant to be, that you've got these role models who teach you what is appropriate and what is inappropriate, and you can just refer to them and say, oh, yeah, no, she would not thumbs up that costume. I shouldn't even ask.
Go back to your closet and come back later. So, like I said before, we had a pretty lively discussion on the Facebook group with this poll. We had 336 respondents as of this afternoon.
I kept getting notifications for that post. But this is a question that is highly debated.
Oh, yeah.
Because of the cultural significance from pagan druid practices. And I think there's always this underpinning, I guess, of things that possibly play with witchcraft, like Harry Potter, and other things that there's always this debate whether or not these things are okay for Christians.
Right,
And there's
right.
always people that fall on both sides.
Of course. And so what I did was I actually went in to the thread and pulled out some comments and some insight from both sides. I think largely in terms of pro versus against, 82.143% of everybody on who responded is either trick or treats or their kids do. So that's a significant part of the population that of the viewership that does. I think a lot of people don't really see sort of the darker influences of its origins, but a few of the things that I want to bring up here is if we wanted to ask, why is trick-or-treating quote-unquote good, not necessarily from the perspective of good things that come from God necessarily, but what are the benefits to this kind of activity? So a lot of the things that I was seeing on the thread was that it's a good community builder. Caitlin said that the church that she is a member of is having a disabled, accessible, sensory-friendly trunk or treat this year.
Oh, wow.
And so I think that's a great improvement in sort of reaching out to kids who might not otherwise be able to experience Halloween because, there's fright and there's flashing lights and sounds, and it can be kind of a creepy day for people. And so people who might struggle with sensory issues, I don't know what's the right way to say that or not, but I could see where Halloween would be a struggle for people like that. Kristen said that her family throws a driveway party because we have the quote-unquote Halloween house in our neighborhood, which I guess is like the Halloween equivalent of the Clark Griswold Christmas house, I hope. And the neighborhood draws kids from all over the city. She says her neighborhood can get up to 900 trick-or-treaters on a weekend Halloween night when the weather is nice. Kids come in van loads from neighborhoods where it may not be a safe place to go trick-or-treating, and they have a great time. So again, it's sort of this safe, family-friendly activity that is becoming more accessible to people as they engage in the community. And also, it's a family-oriented activity. Probably up until a certain point. I think Halloween as a kid is different than Halloween as like a college student, which is another topic for another time.
Which is probably why you kept your question centered on trick-or-treating.
Correct. That's right. That is correct.
Yeah. My church for years did we called it Light Up the Night. I think there was somebody who was concerned they wanted to avoid the Halloween connection, but it was held on Halloween, and it was sort of a festival where we would host it. There were games for kids. We'd give out candy. But I believe part of the original intent was that at that time, the neighborhood was not quite as safe and comfortable, where people wanted their kids walking around after dark, and so they wanted a place where kids could come and be safe and have a good time on that night. Well, as the neighborhood, it's actually changed through the years, and it is now it's a lot more comfortable to walk around at night, and so I actually don't know if we're going to be doing it this year. We've debated the past couple of years whether we want to keep doing it. Is it actually really sort of needed at this point, or is it something where people are like, I'd like to actually be able to go and knock on my neighbor's doors and trick or treat face to face, as opposed to coming together.
Sure.
So that's my church's approach or thing they're wrestling with.
Yeah. Well, I feel like there's a lot more neighborhoods that are also doing trick-or-treating during the daytime too, which is like mind-boggling to me. Because when I was growing up, it was always like you didn't even leave the house until after the sun went down.
Right.
When the lights went on people's houses, that's when you could go knock on their doors. But then
Twilight was for the preschool kids.
Yes. Right. Yeah. Exactly. And then when we went to college at Concordia, we did go trick-or-treating as college students.
Because they had those full-size candy bars, man.
Because we were in River Forest, and River Forest has large houses. But there is the rule there was that you actually had to go at a certain time during the daytime when it was still light out, and that was just mind-boggling. It was weird. And so I fall kind of in the middle of this. I love when little kids dress up. It is the most adorable thing in the world. My favorite memories from Halloween are actually when I was working at the YMCA, and we had a preschool in our building, and they always did a costume parade. And so we would all dress up as employees, usually with some theme.
Nice.
What was it? The Wizard of Oz. So we were like all the different Wizard of Oz characters.
What were you?
I was Dorothy.
Of course you were.
I had the full
It was either that or the flying monkey, but like I straight up was like, she was Dorothy.
I was Dorothy.
I don't
Full
even have to
costume.
ask.
It was great. I had red shoes and everything.
I was a Tin Man one year in high school.
You would be.
I found like an oil funnel that my dad had in the garage, and I washed
only
it
had
out
a
and
heart.
stuck it on my head.
See, now if I were like Aaron, I would probably like trick-or-treating more than I do. As a mother who is averse to both sewing and crafting, and also spending money on expensive one-time use costumes, I dread Halloween. And I know that on the Facebook group there were some people who were like this. I don't have a feeling one way or the other on the morality of trick-or-treating. It just annoys me. You know, I think lots of reasons that people gave for being annoyed, like, you know, giant teenagers who just put a hoodie on and call it a costume coming around and
This
demanding
is my
candy.
costume. No, it's a hoodie. I almost said a brand name.
Oh,
Scrap that.
My husband and I usually wrangle over who has to take the kids trick-or-treating and who gets to stay home and pass out candy. So I definitely have mixed emotions about this, both on a spiritual and on a practical level.
Sure.
And yet, again, I come down to the whole love your neighbor thing.
Mm-hmm.
This is a chance we have to get out and make those connections with our neighbors, give their kids something sweet, and then steal our own children's candy when they
Sure.
get back so they don't eat too much of it.
Mom tax.
yeah. I will say when I was a kid, that was the best part, was just getting all the candy because sugar. Sugar was great.
That's actually a downfall. So we kind of talked about why it's good, but it's not all good. One of the things that came up a couple of times in the thread is kids have food allergies. Like we're becoming a lot more aware of like peanut allergies and, you know, just in general, like it's junk. Like kids are going from door to door eating like it's garbage. Like, don't get me wrong. I will canoe down a river of chocolate all day long. Like, I'm okay with that. But at the end of the day, like, you can't really sustain your life off of that. So, not only that, there are just kids they can't. You can give them all the candy in the world, they can't eat it, and so that's kind of isolating. And then, you know, obviously, we have to sort of reconcile the fact that trick-or-treating is a practice that does have its origins in sort of this Celtic pagan celebration. So I think one of the most outspoken people against the celebration of Halloween, who I actually reached out to her, Emily. I really appreciated her ability to sort of just put herself out there and say, you know what? I am obviously the minority here, but she was able to present sort of her viewpoint. And so what I did want to bring up one of the things that she said, because it is something that's really important to think about and ask ourselves, because the devil is everywhere. He's going to be that's what we're promised in this life. And so something that she said was, I don't believe in celebrating Halloween. I do not think that a church hosting a trunk or treat is acceptable. It is a pagan holiday. Atheists don't walk through the church doors on Christmas to pretend to worship and celebrate the birth of Christ. Why on any level do we as Christians think that this is okay?
Mm-hmm. And I can see a bit of that too. And less of it when I was a kid because I thought it was just fun. As I'm older now and I understand the things that kind of weird me out, I am not a fan of creepy stuff or scary movies or anything that kind of is in that realm of scary, creepy, satanic kind of stuff, even if it is quote unquote harmless. It doesn't sit well with me.
There's some like really creepy, like downright demonic looking stuff.
Yeah, and I just don't like it.
Kind of a funny story, kind of a cheeky story, and I know we have to wrap it up here. When I was like 3 and 4 years old, I was scared of the Halloween aisle. So like I would
blame
run
you.
past it like screaming and my eyes covered.
Yeah.
But like there is truth to that. Like
Yeah.
it's scary.
Yeah.
It's not all and people engage in stuff that is on that night that is not rooted in good innocent Christian fun. I mean, there's Ouija boards, there's seances, there's pranks that borderline on vandalism. So it's not always a great thing to celebrate. But I wanted to go to the source and just get the LCMS's quote unquote official stance on Halloween and trick-or-treating. So
Since we know those people.
so Rachel put me in touch with Pastor Larry Vogel of CTCR, which is the Commission on Theology and Church Relations.
There you
Got
go.
it. Pew.
Yeah. I love our acronym.
We love
acronym
acronyms.
city here.
We love it.
I think I referred to it as the LCMS official stance department.
It is.
That's right.
It really is.
So when I asked him that, he basically said a quote unquote official stance would mean something in Scripture, the Lutheran Confessions, or in an LCMS convention resolution. Because trick-or-treating and Halloween don't fall into any of those things, we don't have, the LCMS does not have an official stance on trick-or-treating. What he encourages people to do, whether you're a kid or a parent or a guardian of a child, the way that you celebrate Halloween should be, you should be conscious of it. You should be informed by Scripture and just allow that to help you make your decisions when it comes to trick-or-treating and Halloween celebrations.
Yeah.
And if you decide that you don't feel like it's good to trick or treat, that's okay. And if you look around and see, oh, this is another way I can love my neighbor, that's okay.
Yeah. Christian freedom.
Fall festivals are great too. Like, let's
It's
be
true.
real. I love a corn maze.
Oh, man.
I don't love a corn maze.
I always get lost in them and then I
Yeah.
get claustrophobic. But anyway.
Wholesome fall fun, y'all.
So there we go. The Bree's big question of whether or not we should Halloween is, well,
Kind of resolved.
in your Christian freedom.
Not at all resolved. Let's just say that. Because everyone's going to have to make this call every year for themselves, for their families. Do I turn the light on, leave it off? Do I allow that princess ninja costume or not? It's these decisions aren't usually one time, one size fits all.
It's true. It's true. In your Christian freedom, pray and use your God-given wisdom. And there we go. All right. Thanks, Bree, for your big question.
You're welcome.
That's all the time we have for this episode of the Lutheran Ladies Lounge podcast. There is always more content of the Lutheran Ladies Lounge at kfuo.org/Lutheran Ladies Lounge or on your favorite podcast player, of course, or in our Facebook group. I'm Sarah.
I'm Erin.
I'm Bree.
I'm Rachel.
And you're listening to the Lutheran Ladies Lounge podcast. Views and opinions expressed on the Lutheran Ladies Lounge podcast may not represent the official position of the management or ownership of KFUO Radio, the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. The Lutheran Ladies Lounge is produced by KFUO Radio and available at kfuo.org or wherever you get your podcasts. Join our community on Facebook in the Lutheran Ladies Lounge.